All right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Thomas Galgani Show, episode 18. Today, we are doing a Cinema Saturday. Based on the order, it was supposed to be a life update video that was going to be a little bit longer of a title. But today is Saturday. I am actually recording this on a Saturday. So for real, it is Saturday. And first off, quick note, it's been a while. If you're new to the show and you look back and you see that my last episode before this was a little bit, I fell off there. So I broke the consistency, and it really just came down to, personal family commitments, as well as, had to catch up on client work. But I had to be honest with myself, call myself out and just recognize that if something is important to me, I have to stay consistent with it. I got to keep doing it, obviously. Much easier said than done. Everybody knows that, I think, is that just the idea that, whether you're getting paid to do it or not, if it's important to you, you got to keep doing it. And so I'm calling myself out here, and that I don't want that to happen again. So, again, if you're new to the show, Cinema Saturday is basically where we pick a film, or it could be a series, especially because of how high the production value is of some of these new shows, how high they can be. But, we pick a film because I love movies, and hopefully you do too. So today is going to be a fun one because I'm going to briefly talk about The Way, starring Martin Sheen and Emilio Estevez. And it's actually Emilio Estevez's, his film. And, there's a reason why I'm picking this. And it is actually, because my parents are doing The Way. If you don't know what The Way is, if you haven't heard of the movie or know, it is the Camino de Santiago, also referred to as The Way. And Camino de Santiago is the way of St. James. And it starts off in France and goes through Spain. It's a walk that is a pilgrimage that the Apostle James took very long time ago, obviously. And, it is basically an homage, paying honor to him. And it is, a religious experience. However, a lot of people who are not religious, aren't Christians at all, do The Way. And in fact, there's a whole community, even priests around the area talk about how welcoming that they are to everybody who does it for non-religious reasons. You can do it for a myriad of reasons, obviously, for whatever it is. It's your walk, and it's about 500 miles on foot. There are some people who do it by bike or by horseback. I've heard it's a very small percentage of people that do it on horseback because it's extremely difficult. Some of the terrain is really hilly and gets pretty technical. And about 20% of the people do it biking. But the real way, from what I can see, the real way is by foot. And so my parents are actually doing that. And I might go back to that a couple of times because it's really special to me. I'm really proud of them. I'm really happy for them because it's actually their first time in Europe as well. And it's inspiring to me that they're doing this. It's really cool because they've been talking about this for years. We actually saw the movie The Way about 10 years ago or so. I cannot remember off the top of my head the date it first released, but it's been out for a while. And we're going to get into the movie in just a second. But first, I wanted to also put out that I just recently recorded an episode with my parents a couple nights before they actually departed for Europe. And they're just now starting the walk this weekend. I'm so pumped for them. And that episode is going to come out on Tuesday, episode 19. And yeah, so you'll get to hear from them more directly. It's very little speaking from me and much more from both my parents. And they talk about their reasons for doing it, and you'll kind of get a better idea of just kind of what to expect, how they've prepared for it, and the different things that they're kind of anticipating mentally. And I wanted to record that because, like I said, it's a super cool experience that they've embarked on, and really, really cool journey. And so I wanted to get that. And then we're also going to do an after podcast. So you get to see the before and after. They can go after they complete it. And so yeah, get to look forward to that on this coming Tuesday for episode 19. Now, on to the movie, the film, The Way. Again, like I said, starring Martin Sheen and Emilio Estevez. First of all, if you don't know why they have different last names, I didn't know this either, but I just searched around and I found an interview, kind of a more recent interview from Emilio Estevez. And I guess the reason is that Martin Sheen picked Sheen because at the time that he was getting into Hollywood, apparently there was a lot of prejudice against people with Hispanic last names. And so he picked Sheen as sort of his screen name. But his driver's license, passport, and everything still says Estevez. And he told kind of this heartbreaking, kind of a tear. I thought it was kind of intense, kind of sad, to a story of his grandfather who went and saw a movie. They went to the movies to see Martin Sheen in one of his films, and he looked up at the screen there, or outside of the theater, I forget what it's called, but where they have the name, and it said, starring Martin Sheen. And Emilio could see his grandfather just shaking his head in disappointment. And for the first time, the movie The Way actually has Martin Sheen's name as Martin Estevez, and because he's also an executive producer as well. And I think as they were promoting it, it came out as Martin Sheen and stuff like that, just so people would recognize him. But yeah, kind of a cool backstory there. And because this was a passion project of Emilio Estevez. He wrote it and directed it. A lot of the stories, little subplots in the movie, are actually inspired from other sources and stuff that they cite there in the credits. But for the most part, it's his project. And again, this should be in the title, but spoiler alert for the film. I'm actually, on the topic of spoilers, I'm a big advocate against watching even trailers or teasers for movies, because I feel like they give away so much. They ruin films. So I like to read a little bit about it, me personally, and then just go watch it. Just go watch it for yourself and let it impact you the way that it was meant to. And so again, warning, if you haven't seen it yet, go watch the film. It's an amazing film, and it's not just one of those spiritual feel-good movies. It's actually a good movie. And I say that because there's nothing wrong with spiritual movies by themselves, but what I mean by that is I think some movies, they get so into being just very feel-good and having that some kind of a spiritual message without the art itself actually being good. It's still an art form. Filmmaking is an art form. And so if it's not very good, even though the message is great, if the vehicle to deliver that message is not good, I'm going to say so. And other people should feel comfortable in saying so, because it is an art form. Anyways, but The Way, as far as I'm concerned, is a good film. Very solid. And again, like I said, the spoilers is the basic premise of this is Martin Sheen's character, Tom. He's automatically the coolest character because he has my name. He is a lapsed Catholic, not a religious person, and he's a doctor, very busy, loves to play golf, stuff like that. And he is just, very caught up in the day-to-day. And his son decides to, tells him he's not going to finish his PhD program and that he wants to just go travel. He's got to go see these places, right? He's got to go. And he actually invites his father, Tom, to come with him. He's like, how about a father-son trip, I don't know why. I was actually kind of choked up when I watched this movie, even though I had seen it before, because maybe it's because I'm a dad now, and all of these scenes were just pretty intense. So I don't, again, I didn't even anticipate that when I was watching this, but there's a line in there when, the dad says, you get basically some kind of criticism against that. And then Emilio Estevez's character, Daniel, says, I thought that as you were driving me to the airport that you would, not lecture me about how I'm ruining my life. And then Tom, Martin Sheen goes, I lied. He says, don't judge this. Don't judge me. And he goes, you may not think, Tom's response to that says, you may not think much of what I do, or, something along those lines. Like you may not think much of what I do, but it's the life that I've chosen. And then Daniel says, you don't choose a life, Dad, you live one. And, I just thought that was a really, interesting line, because on the one hand, I personally disagree with that. I think, of course, you choose a life. Something as simple as like substance abuse, if somebody struggles with that, and then they choose sobriety, just as a very basic, right, like kind of simple example, right? The two trajectories, completely opposite in different directions. That's a choice, I think. Of course, just on the surface level, but it was a really deep line that really kind of gets you thinking. And there are a lot of lines like that kind of spread out through the film that really kind of make you pause for a little bit, and drops him off. So he drops his son off at the airport. And then as he goes, I know how I said, watch out for spoilers. So go watch this first. So I don't know why I'm walking you through everything. Because hopefully you've seen it, but but yeah, just to lay the seed. So after he goes, when he's dropped him off, and he's been in Europe for a little while now. He's on a golf trip, and then all of a sudden he gets a phone call from somebody in France, I believe it is. Yeah, so somebody in France and says, like, your son has died. He was caught in a storm on the way. It was like the first day out, and he was by himself. He chose to do the walk by himself. So he immediately, without even saying anything, he leaves his golf buddies. When that happens, that was intense. And I think that, when, he goes out there to see him, sees his body, and then he decides he's going to do the Camino de Santiago. But still, he's completely shut off to the spiritual side of it, to any religious element of it. And he takes the ashes and says, like, for the both of us. I always laugh at that line. I don't know why. Don't judge me, but that, I know it's not funny. But when the guy said, the other guy says to him, like, both of us, you're not ready for this, first of all. But when he says both of us, or he's like, we, why are we going? And he goes, he holds up his son's ashes and he says, both of us. And it just, I don't know why, the way that was filmed just always makes me laugh, but it's a very touching, a really moving, story about that. And that whole time, the parts, how I mentioned when I get kind of choked up, was when they show these images of Daniel throughout the film, as throughout his journey on the way, and he sees him as if he's there, right? And then it goes away, and I just love the way that it was shot. just so beautifully, very simply. And there's a movie I wanted to bring up when it comes to this technique, kind of that touch, is I think it's called We Own the Night with Joaquin Phoenix, about Russian gangsters, and there's all kinds of stuff, cocaine, guns, Mark Wahlberg is in it too. And there's a scene at the end where Joaquin Phoenix, because he's lost his girlfriend or fiance at the time, I can't remember, but they're very close. And because of Joaquin Phoenix's character's choice to become a cop and basically, fight against the people that they had become friends with and kind of joined forces with, she leaves him. But at the end, there's a scene where he sees her in the crowd as he's becoming, I think it's when he's becoming commissioned he's becoming a police officer. There's a ceremony. He looks out in the crowd and he sees her, and then looks back, and then it's not her. And just that instant switch, no visual effects, nothing crazy like that, but it's not her. It's very similar to the way that they do it in The Way with Martin Sheen and his sights, his visions of his son. And the reason I bring that up is because that technique in We Own the Night, I thought, was probably the best part of the entire movie because it was just really well done. And I think it's also realistic if you think about somebody that is no longer in your life, or somebody who's passed away or something like that. It can be similar to that, and almost like they're there with you, kind of helping you along. And I think, the Way is I really liked it. Like I said, when I watched it, I had seen most of it, but then a week ago, before interviewing my parents, I wanted to watch it again from start to finish, the whole way through. And it was much more moving to me, having now being a father. And I think that's kind of the whole thing, is that he loved his son so much and felt so bad about being disconnected. And he's also, as he's doing this experience, he's also opened up to all these new perspectives. And when he meets these people along the way, there's an Irish writer, a woman from Canada, and then a Dutch guy from Amsterdam, and they're all very different, and they're all doing the Camino 4 different ways. And I really like that. It kind of reminded me a lot of my time studying abroad, by the way, where everybody's kind of, everybody's different. Everybody has their own backgrounds, but they're there for one common purpose, right? Like the meaning and the purpose behind why they're doing it might be different. Walking the Camino, their reasons are all different, but at the same time, but they're there. The end goal is, hey, we're going to finish this thing, 500 miles. We're going to do the walk. And my experiences abroad, it was very similar to that of like, hey, we're all trying to become proficient in this language and immerse ourselves in the culture, but we all have different ways of doing that. We were hanging out with different people, different locals, doing different things. And I really like that touch. It's a very human element to it when it shows their different insecurities. Ultimately, I think that at the end, when, again, this is another spoiler in case you kept listening without having seen it, but when they don't accomplish any of their goals, I was a little disappointed with that. And of course, it's like supposed to be this cool moment of like, this isn't why they were doing it. The Canadian woman is still smoking. The Dutchman hasn't lost any weight, what he said. Because I think, Martin Sheen is like, he has accomplished it. He threw his son's ashes out into the sea, and that it supposedly doesn't have anything to do with religion, but that he found a new part of himself. And it's an interesting concept, you know, and I get the whole idea of like, when we do something challenging, sometimes we think that there's some external, superficial thing that we're chasing, we want to achieve and, you know, attain some higher level of ourselves. And the idea being that we don't need that. It was there with us all along and all that. But my personal thing is just like, no, man, like, sometimes there are, you should want to do that. Like, why, I don't know. I guess it was kind of sad to me a little bit. And I don't understand why that was, I get, like I said, I get it. It's, on the one hand, it's a very warm kind of touch, but I also think it would have been a little bit more inspiring and almost perhaps realistic had they followed through with that stuff. If you walk 500 miles, you know, yeah, I guess in a month's time frame, it's easy to not lose weight. Like the Dutchmen, you know, if you're eating a lot and all that stuff, I get it. You know, they're drinking wine with every meal. But it's like, I think it would be very achievable, very doable to lose a considerable amount of weight on that if you're just a little, and, you know, this guy would have seen himself differently, and just, that's just one kind of tangent on my one side note. And I think that people are always so much more capable than they believe. Okay, that's, I don't mean to sound too like motivational about that, but I think another way to look at it is, had they achieved their goals, but then it ends up not being the focus. Like, it's just kind of, it becomes a byproduct of the actual achievement and this achieving this new level of consciousness, if you want to look at it that way. Because I think that that's almost more realistic too. If a person is trying to give up to kick unhealthy habits, for example, a lot of times they do so as an indirect result of achieving something else. And then you don't think about that. Like, if you're just you know, let's say you're trying to give up junk food, and then, you know, in the first couple of weeks or so, you keep thinking about like, man, I can't have this, I can't have that. And it's a very negative, you're focusing on the lack of that. Whereas as you start to get really into all the things you're now able to do, and the way that you feel now that you're eating whole, you know, more whole foods and stuff like that, and you're more active, avoiding the junk food, then you don't even crave it anymore. And that's like the whole thing is like, you know, I don't know. I'm sure, you know, smoking is a lot more, is a lot different, but it's just one of those things. I feel like that would have been kind of cool if they had at least one of them accomplish their thing, where it was like, I thought this was the whole goal, but it turns out that no, I wanted this other thing. They get this other thing, some deeper meaning to having done the way. And then their bad habit is kicked just even as a byproduct of achieving that new place in their mind. So that's my one point. And, yeah, I definitely think I personally want to do the Camino de Santiago with my wife. So, you know, someday, and probably with my son, as well, that would be pretty cool. And I think, that it's just one of those super cool, movies, kind of a story. And I'm really excited. Like I said, I think it's awesome that my parents are doing it, because then we'll get to have an inside look at what that experience is actually like. And I think, you know, one of the parts of the way, for example, is when they're carrying a rock, or multiple rocks that are supposed to each represent one of your problems. And then when you leave them in a certain location, you're saying goodbye to them. I love just all these touches like that, just are incredibly meaningful. And again, it doesn't even have to be tied with religion. My parents are religious, and a lot of people that do it are, and it's inherently comes from a religious, place. But it doesn't have to be that. And I love how kind of welcoming they are, the priests and everybody, to people of all backgrounds and all reasons for doing it. And I just think it's such a really, it's a really cool thing, and that people want to help each other accomplish that goal of, finishing the way. And, so that movie, I really kind of we didn't get into a lot of specific scenes. A lot of times these Cinema Saturdays are going to be more with specific scenes, cinematography and stuff. But for me, that movie in particular isn't really, it's much less about that and more about kind of the sentimental aspects to it. And that one technique, of his visions of his son, like I said, got me choked up a little bit. I wasn't even expecting that, especially, me talking to camera right now, recording this podcast. I was not expecting that either, but as you can tell, it's a very moving aspect to me. And I think it was really well done, and something that I think a lot of people, parents especially, can get something out of in that film, and kind of the messages, the main message behind it. All right, guys. So I think we'll just leave it at that. As an introduction to the next episode, I'll probably say a little bit more, maybe reference something about the movie. The way is obviously so much more than whatever the movie shows, the way itself, of course, but it's worth mentioning just because, first of all, my parents, for example, would have never even heard of it had it not been for the movie. It's well done. And yeah, but like I said, we'll talk more about that in the next episode, and I will catch you guys soon. All right, guys, have a good rest of your weekend.